Chapter 256, Making a Clean Break with the Past. Su Lingyun said, Xiao, I understand your concern and I agree with you. But I believe that Xiangfei's basic nature isn't absolutely bad. Even your uncle Su Shangguan lost his basic nature because of money. He used to be a good person before, very kind, and used to take care of the family. He also really helped us a lot all these years living in Star City. So, Xiao, you have to find a way to save him if he repent in prison. All right, Mom. Tang Xiao complied. At Qinghe County, Su Village. Su Xiangfei quietly leaned on the courtyard wall while smoking a cigarette. He clearly heard the conversation between Su Lingyun and Tang Xiao. He felt hatred. Yet, he didn't know for whom he should point his hatred to. He experienced too many things in these couple of months. Despite considering himself very strong in bearing pressure, yet hid in the home of his sister's classmate for many days. Smoking and drinking every day, living a life that was even worse than death. Tang Xiao was the one he wanted to hate because he knew that Tang Xiao was the one who harmed his family. However, as he pondered and recalled everything that had happened, he suddenly realized that his family was indeed the one that pretty much bullied his aunt and cousin using their riches and powerful status. As he recalled about that time, if not for the police finding that evidence, it would have been Tang Xiao going to jail instead of his parents. 2 lines of tears fell down from Su Xiangfei's eyes as he heard his aunt's words. Prior to this, he used to think that his aunt was a very weak person and easy to bully. He used to watch his parents bully her, yet he acted as though he was watching a drama play. But now, after he heard his aunt, all sort of mixed feelings filled his heart. Pa. He threw the cigarette butt to the ground and fiercely extinguished it with his tiptoe. He then turned around and went straight to Su Lingyun and knelt. Auntie, I'm really sorry. Su Lingyun was shocked by Su Xiangfei's action. She looked at him with disbelief as she opened her mouth, but not knowing what to say. She lifted her phone but didn't end the call, whereas her son at the other end of the phone was also silent. After a long period of time, Su Lingyun sobered up from her daze. She quickly propped Su Xiangfei up as she sighed and said sincerely and earnestly, Xiangfei, no matter how bad our discords, we're relatives, after all, family members. Xiao was only afraid of me being bullied. You're older than him so you should be able to understand more about this, so don't blame him. Su Xiangfei said bitterly, Auntie, I don't blame him. Just like what you just said, it was because my father's mind was muddled by wealth, whereas I was also too full of myself. I did frame him initially. If it wasn't discovered, perhaps he would be the one in jail now, not my parents. So I don't hate him. A happy expression was revealed on Su Lingyun's face. She gently patted his shoulder and said, Xiangfei. It's good that you don't hate him. Don't you worry though. Xiao is someone who lives up to his word. He said to your grandmother that after 2 years, he will certainly get your father out of jail. Su Xiangfei nodded heavily and said, Auntie, the reason I came to my senses and woke up is actually due to my father. When he tried to commit suicide before he was arrested, he was hospitalized and I heard him shouting your name in his coma, apologizing to you. At that moment I knew that father regretted for everything he did to you. Sparkling and translucent tears overflowed from Su Lingyun's eyes. For her blood brother, if he could wake up and treat her as a relative and then become a good person, even if she had to pay a huge price, she was willing. Xiangfei, stay with your grandma at home. Wait for a few days, and then we'll go back to Star City together to see your father. All right, Auntie. Su Xiangfei nodded heavily. However, the trace of a smile that had just appeared on his face quickly dissipated. After a moment's hesitation, he said in a low voice, Auntie, if my older sister can't think this through and continue hating you and Tang Xiao, please don't blame her. Su Lingyun shook her head as she sighed, I can understand if she hates me and Tang Xiao. Don't worry. I'm, after all, her aunt. I'll talk to her well when I see her. She left for Shanghai, said Su Xiangfei. What will she do there? Asked Su Lingyun with a puzzled expression. She said that she would live with her classmate, find a job and settle there, said Su Xiangfei. Su Lingyun was silent for a moment. Then, she nodded and said slowly, your cousin will also go study in Shanghai soon. After he has settled there, I'll ask him to find your sister. Su Xiangfei was silent for a moment before he nodded and slowly replied, thank you, auntie. Please tell my cousin that I indeed behaved badly before. At this time, Tang Xiu's voice came through the phone, Mom, please pass cell phone to Xiangfei. As Su Lingyun heard it, she quickly handed her mobile to Su Xiangfei, saying, your cousin wants to talk to you. A complex expression was revealed on Su Xiangfei's face. He took the phone but didn't speak. Then, Tang Xiu's voice was transmitted, Xiangfei, I don't care whether you're truly sincere in repenting or faking it. Do remember, if you dare to do something that hurts my mother, I'll make you experience the most miserable taste in this world. But, if you're truly able to turn a new leaf in life and kindly treat our relatives, I can promise to give you a rapid progress in your life. Su Xiangfei replied in a bitter tone, having a rapid progress in life? I'm afraid that I'd be just like my father, losing myself after progressing rapidly. Cousin. Tang Xiu, I'd rather write off everything that happened before. Auntie has treated me kindly, so I won't let her down. Also, I'll be taking out my time to come back, staying with Grandma and looking after her. Remember your own words, said Tang Xiu. Having said that, Tang Xiu hung up the phone directly. He wasn't someone who was over-suspicious of anyone, yet he still couldn't trust Su Xiangfei fully. Therefore, after thinking for a moment, he dialed the number Kawako Kitamiya had given him. Kawako Kitamiya speaking, may I ask who is this? It's me. Your boss? Yes. Kawako Kitamiya's tone immediately turned more respectful as she asked, do you have any command for me, boss? Have you returned to Japan? Asked Tang Xiu. Kawako Kitamiya shook her head and said, not yet, boss. Their injuries are serious. We are still somewhere in Star City. We're preparing to go back in 2 days. Are there any female ninjas in your North Star 1 Blade School? Ones that are loyal to you? Asked Tang Xiu. Kawako Kitamiya replied confidently, I have 4 attendants who have accepted severe training from North Star 1 Blade School. But I didn't bring them along with me this time. Also, I'll use the soul ruling spell on them when I go back, to make them more loyal. Do they speak Mandarin? Asked Tang Xiu. Yes. They are fluent in Japanese, Mandarin, English, French, and German, said Kawako Kitamiya respectfully. Tang Xiu said, in that case, after you use the soul ruling spell, send 2 of them to Star City to protect my mother secretly. I'll send my mother's information to you later. Understood. Kawako Kitamiya said respectfully. Tang Xiu hung up the phone. He edited the information about his mother and then sent it to Kawako. After that, he got dressed, brushed his teeth and washed his face as he went to the hall on the 1st floor. A faint scent of food came from the dining room. You woke up? It's lunchtime. Kang Xia carried tow dishes from the kitchen and showed a sweet smile when she saw Tang Xiu. Looking at her, Tang Xiu realized that Kang Xia was walking in an awkward manner. He suddenly understood the reason, yet, he had no choice but lament about the mysteriousness of the creatures called humans. Kang Xia was so tired she could barely move a finger and had no strength before this, yet she was so energetic now. Looking at her bright and spirited appearance, she seemed more beautiful and breathtaking. Yuan Chuling was right. There are only dead tired cows on earth, and no land has ever gone bad after being plowed. Tang Xiu secretly sighed as he walked to the dining room, smiling. Master. Gu Yin had sat at the dining table and looked full of joy as she saw Tang Xiu's arrival. Tang Xiu stroked her small head and said with a smile, let's eat. Also, a few days later, I'll take you along with me to Jingmen Island. Guin didn't care about where they would go, she only cared about being together with Tang Xiu. Jingmen Island? Kang Xia, who was just put the dishes on the table, suddenly had a change in expression upon hearing Tang Xiu's words. The both of them had just an intimate event, so she became especially concerned about Tang Xiu. If Tang Xiu was to go somewhere, she might not care about it. But she was a bit worried if he went to Jingmen Island. It was because Ouyang Lulu lived there, and she was on Jingmen Island now. Kang Xia tried hard to make her expression look normal as she asked, "Boss, what are you taking Yinin to Jingmen Island for? Is it to play or there's something else?" Clueless about her thoughts, Tang Xiu replied, "I'm gonna take her to see her senior sister as well as take her on a trip abroad along the way. I had bought an island in the Pacific Ocean before, of which I hadn't seen it yet. So I'm going there before college starts."
Ah.
Right. I don't have a passport either. Can you help me handling the passport applications for me and Yinin? Kang Xia secretly relaxed. Yet, she was secretly astonished when she heard that Tang Xiu also had another apprentice that turned out to be a woman. Then, she said, "Boss, you need to apply for a passport by yourself, and it also takes a bit of time to get it. But if you find Long Zhengyu, he should be able to get it." Tang Xiu nodded, "Then I'll ask his help. Come sit down and let's eat. We gotta take care of our bodies." Take care of the body? Suddenly, Kang Xia recalled what happened between the two of them. A charming, shy expression was instantly revealed on her face as she lowered her head and sat down in front of the table. Guin raised up her small face and asked, "Master, is senior sister's temper good? Would she take a liking to Yinin?" Tang Xiu smiled, "Your senior sister is injured and in a coma. Her temper is very good, however. Besides, you look like her when she was small. I think she'll certainly like you." Gu Yin nodded cutely. Kang Xia then asked with a confused expression, "How many apprentices do you have exactly, boss?" "There are 4 presently," replied Tang Xiu with a smile. Kang Xia continued, "I only know Chen Jizhong and Gu Yin, and the one who's working in the hospital. Who's the other one? Why haven't I heard it from you before?" Tang Xiu answered with a pale smile, "Some things are kinda inconvenient to say. Wait until later, then you'll know about her." Chapter 257, First Meeting. After lunch, Kang Xia left South Gate Town in a hurry. The magnificent Tang Corporation was exactly at the initial stage and there was a lot of things she had to manage personally. Even if Tang Xiu gave her a day off, she wouldn't agree to it. Tang Xiu left his villa's courtyard and found his Land Rover parked on the roadside outside. He went back to the villa and took the car keys. After that, he drove to Star City Chinese Medical Hospital. His fellow villagers came to be hospitalized in Star City, and even though he made a call to arrange everything for them, he still had to go there and see them. They watched him as he grew up, after all. At Star City Chinese Medical Hospital, Tang Xiu parked the car in the parking area and walked toward the inpatient department. On the way there, he called Dai Xinyue and asked her the ward number for the 5 injured villagers. At the president's office, as Li Hongji was reviewing the documents, he was suddenly struck with happiness as well as feeling quite regretful. It was regretful that the hospital only had a few rooms, whereas there were a lot of patients being admitted every day. It was joyful because Star City Chinese Medical Hospital became quite famous now. Even the big and more famous hospitals in the country had contacted him. If only Tang Xiu could forever stay, it would have been great. Sigh. If he was willing to stay, I'd really willing to give the president position to him. As he finished reading the documents, Li Hongji shook his head and sighed. Ring, ring, ring. As his cell phone rang, his brows furrowed. He took the mobile and saw the caller ID. His eyes suddenly turned bright. After he answered the call, he spoke with a very amiable tone, "Hello Xinyue. Is there something you need? Is your master coming to our Star City Chinese Medical Hospital? Yes. My master is going to the inpatient department to visit his fellow villagers there. Dai Xinyue's voice came through the phone. A happy expression was written on Li Hongji's face as he immediately said, "Did you tell him my request to report if he came to the hospital?" "Yes, I did," said Dai Xinyue. The smile on Li Hongji's face became thicker. Since Tang Xiu didn't disagree, that meant Tang Xiu wouldn't mind seeing him. When he thought up to there, he immediately said it to Dai Xinyue as he hung up the phone and came out of the president's office. Inside the inpatient department ward, Su Jianda was half leaning on the sickbed while eating a piece of an apple peeled by his daughter. At the same time, he spoke to the patient on the next bed who was just being admitted with a joyfully satisfied expression. "The divine doctor you just mentioned, I know who he is. Not only do I know him, I also know where his family lives." The patient on the next bed was a white-haired old man with a son and daughter at his bedside. Upon hearing Su Jianda's words, the old man's daughter replied quickly, "You know where he lives? Really? I heard that this divine doctor comes and goes without giving notice. He also has no fixed time for his medical service in Star City Chinese Medical Hospital. My dad has asked the hospital's president, and he didn't even know when divine Dr. Tang would come over to give medical services." Su Jianda smiled at her, replying, "Considering that you know the president, I can tell that you're not an ordinary person. Do you know why we can stay in this ward? It's because Tang Xiu made a phone call to the hospital's leader. Also, I watched him grow up. That child is sensible, thoughtful and intelligent, so it's no wonder that he became a divine doctor." "Uncle Jianda, you're overpraising me way too much. It kinda makes me embarrassed." A voice came from the outside as Tang Xiu's figure appeared at the door. A pleasantly surprised expression was immediately written on the faces of Su Jianda as well as the other Su villagers. Su Jianda was struggling to get up, but Tang Xiu stopped him. "Uncle Jianda, you're injured, so don't get up. We're relatives, after all, so we can cut ceremonies between us. How is it? Have your injuries recovered?" Tang Xiu smiled at him and asked. Su Jianda said excitedly, "The recovery is great. The doctor said I only need 10 to 15 days before I can leave the hospital." "Tang Xiu, it's really you. But, weren't you going to Qinghe County? How come you're back in Star City now? Everything has been handled well at home, and the culprit who injured you has apologized and admitted their mistakes. They also paid compensation. So that's the end of the incident. As for me, I have things to take care of, so I came back to Star City." Immediately after, Tang Xiu greeted the other villages inside the ward. Although he was rich and powerful at present, as well as being hailed as a divine doctor in this hospital, he didn't act arrogant and his attitude was as modest as always. On the next sickbed, the white-haired old man who was half-seated on the bedhead was looking at Tang Xiu with a curious expression. His children were also doing the same. They had heard that divine Dr. Tang was very young, but it was out of their imagination that he would be this young. Seeing Tang Xiu and the fellow Su villagers greeting each other, the old man then smiled and said, "Heroes truly come from the youth. I have heard that divine Dr. Tang is a young man, but to be this young is beyond my imagination. Divine Dr. Tang, you come and leave as if it's a coincidence. Might I ask you to check my sickness right now?" Tang Xiu looked at the old man with a slight vigilance in his eyes. Just when he came to the inpatient department, he realized something unusual. In the entire inpatient department, there were at least 20 men in casual suits watching the stairs and elevators. There were also several stern-looking men at the ward corridor who seemed to be martial arts experts, who were also intentionally watching the ward. Hence, he already guessed that the old man's identity was definitely extraordinary. Furthermore, he felt that the old man was somewhat familiar, but he couldn't remember where he had seen him. After a moment of silence, he asked, "What is your illness?" The old man smiled wryly. It's asthma, a chronic one for many years. It's getting more and more serious nowadays. Hence, when I heard that Star City Chinese Medical Hospital has a divine doctor on duty, my children brought me here from Beijing. How should I address you? Tang Xiu nodded. The old man laughed. My family name is also Tang. Our whole family should come from the same line about 500 years ago. Family name Tang, from Beijing? Tang Xiu's brows furrowed. Although Su Lingyun didn't disclose too much information about his father to him, yet she had told him that his father came from Beijing and was also surnamed Tang. However, he shook his head secretly, because he didn't believe that such coincidence could happen in the world. Furthermore, that father who had no affection for him whatsoever should have nothing to do with them. This family's background wasn't simple. If he was related to this family, would he even possibly take a liking to his mother who was only an ordinary woman from the countryside? Tang Xiu looked at the old man's smiling face and lightly said, to be honest, I have no good impression on the people surnamed Tang. If I could, I really wanted my surname to be Su. Anyways, asthma is very easy to treat. The illness problem is inside the lungs. Please wait until your family takes you to the consultation room and I'll treat you there. Knock, knock. The door was knocked as Li Hongji, accompanied by two hospital's leaders, strode inside. When he saw Tang Xiu, he immediately spoke excitedly, Tang Xiu, you really came. You know, I'm really excited as well as in distress right now. If you didn't come, I'm afraid that I'd have to visit you. Tang Xiu said with a puzzled expression, is there something you need me for? Li Hongji forced a smile, of course there are matters that need you. Because of you, our Star City Chinese Medical Hospital has become well known throughout the country. You've cured those hard-to-treat internal illnesses and also treated a lot of patients who came from other regions of the country, who can't be treated by the outstanding doctors from many large hospitals. Hence, you're the most dazzling supernova in the medical world. Don't tell me that you didn't realize it when you come to the hospital? This inpatient department is already filled with patients coming from all over the country. Even each corridor on every floor is temporarily filled with sick beds. The 50 beds we bought yesterday are far from adequate. There are a lot of patients lying in the corridors. Tang Xiu was dazed and said with disbelief, the fame of Star City Chinese Medical Hospital has really become so big? Li Hongji forced out a smile and said, it's absolutely true. Tang Xiu touched his nose and said lightly, it seems that I ought to lessen the number of times I give medical service here. Tall trees attract the wind, whereas I myself never like to stand in the limelight. He then turned his head and spoke to the old man, how about this, let your children take you to the consultation room? I'll examine you there. Afterwards, you can save the time and leave right away. Li Hongji looked at the old man as an unusual light flashed in his eyes. He then quickly said, Senior Chief, since Tang Xiu is willing to give you treatment, you'll finally be able to be cured of your asthma. He believed in Tang Xiu because he knew one thing, Sun Wenjing's mother. She was an old lady who was suffering of a middle-stage liver cancer and was cured by Tang Xiu. It'd simply be a joke if a divine doctor, who had been able to cure a middle-stage liver cancer of an old woman was unable to cure asthma. Hence, he was pretty confident in Tang Xiu. Senior official? Tang Xiu frowned. A picture suddenly flashed inside his mind. He suddenly understood as to why he felt that this old man looked somewhat familiar. He was one of the top leaders of the country and could be grouped within the top 10 influential figures throughout the country. He used to watch him on TV news before. The old man frowned and replied in a low voice, President Li, haven't I told you to not call me that? It's fine calling me Old Tang. Yes, yes, yes. Li Hongji quickly let out an obsequiously smile and said. The old man looked at Tang Xiu as he smiled and said, Divine Dr. Tang, I'll have to trouble you then. If there's anything to be prepared in advance, you can tell President Li directly. Tang Xiu nodded slightly, prepare a basin of warm water and clean towels. Also, prepare for me some medical alcohol along with alcohol cotton. The hospital leader who accompanied Li Hongji behind immediately said, I'll go prepare them at once. Tang Xiu waved his hand as he then spoke to Li Hongji, I must take a trip abroad for a few days. If I can handle the matters ahead of schedule, I'll still have some time before college starts, so I'll come to the hospital and give medical services for a few days. But if I come back late, I won't be able to give medical services here anymore. I'll only have time again when vacation comes. About those patients coming from all over the country, the hospital still has other doctors, so you can let them handle it. As Li Hongji heard it, a bitter and sour expression immediately covered his face. The hospital had received so many external patients. If Tang Xiu was to put down his workload, perhaps he, as the top leader, would be unable to withstand it. After all, there were a lot of people among the patients that had extraordinary backgrounds. Even though they paled in comparison with the one in front of them, some people were really not good to offend. Chapter 258, An Unexpected Turn of Events. Li Hongji hesitated for a moment before carefully asking, Tang Xiu, you don't need to wait for a few days before going abroad. Can you spare 2 days before you leave? Besides, those patients are kinda pitiful, and they come from faraway places. If they can't see you, they will be very disappointed. You can rest assured that, after you've given medical service for 2 days, I'll immediately announce your leave because of an important matter, saying you won't come back to our Star City Chinese Medical Hospital within a short time. Tang Xiu was silent for a moment before nodding, so be it then. I have something to do tomorrow, but after I'm done with it I'll come here give treatment for 2 days. Pleasantly surprised, Li Hongji said, Great. I'll inform everyone immediately. Knock, knock. The ward's door was knocked. As he looked at the crowd of people outside who were about to enter the room, Tang Xiu stared blankly for a moment as a surprised expression filled his eyes. It was because he knew someone from among them, the Seaside Straight Manors owner in Jingmen Island, Tang Dong. The expression on the old man's face on the sickbed turned gloomy as he asked with a heavy tone, Why are you here? Tang Dong himself was obviously surprised upon seeing Tang Xiu here. He faced Tang Xiu and nodded at him. Forcing out a smile, he then replied to the old man, Uncle, my father heard that you're visiting Star City for treatment, so he wanted me to come and see you. Moreover, I also have acquaintances in Star City. Hence, my visit this time is also to deliver a number of goods to him ready to trade. Humph, the old man snorted coldly, it's damn rare for your father to remember me, eh? So be it. Since you have come and have also seen me, just go and take care of your business. Tang Dong smiled wryly, Uncle, even if I want to take care of my business, I'll still have to find my acquaintance first. If I leave now, I won't be able to conclude the business transaction. The old man shouted angrily, whether you're able or unable to do your business, how the hell would it be related to this place? You're an adult, yet how could you be so frivolous? Would it be even possible for you to do your business transaction here? Humph. Tang Dong forced out a wry smile, Uncle, the person I'm gonna have a transaction with is exactly here. The old man was surprised for a moment before he flew into a rage. At this moment, a trace of smile revealed on Tang Xiu's face as he said, Tang Dong, how many cargoes did you bring this time? Tang Dong extended his fingers as he smiled, 5. Tang Xiu nodded, where are they? I've sent some people to escort them to the previous place we had a transaction. I originally wanted to see my uncle before calling you. But I never thought I would bump into you here. How is it? You also have relatives or friends being hospitalized here? Tang Shi pointed to the 2 villagers on the sickbeds and replied, Yes, they are injured, so I came to see them. It's the same for me. I didn't expect such a coincidence, this elderly turning out to be your uncle. Presently, even if I don't speak, perhaps your hospital is even afraid to charge him for the hospitalization and medical treatment fees, right? Li Hongji let out an embarrassed smile, of course, of course. The old man partly sat on the sickbed head as he looked at Tang Dong and Tang Xiu with astonishment. He didn't expect that his nephew would know Tang Xiu and even had business deals with him. Out of curiosity, he asked, Tang Dong, your cooperation with Divine Dr. Tang, what kind of business is it? Divine Dr. Tang? Tang Dong looked at Tang Xiu with a strange expression and replied truthfully, Uncle, you too know about our family's manner. Tang Xiu bought those fierce beasts' bones as well as the other materials from its body for a high price. I already sold him 4 dead fierce beasts and its bones, and this time I brought 5. The old man was astonished. Dr. Tang, what are you making in the end? Aside from being a doctor in this hospital, you seem to also be a student. Have you started your own business? Tang Xiu said lightly, I do have a little business that makes some money and support my family. You have a distinguished status, so you don't know the hardships of little people like us. The old man was speechless. He was surnamed Tang and was called Tang Guisheng, whereas his children at the bedside were Tang Yunpeng and Tang Min. At this moment, Tang Yunpeng frowned, Divine Dr. Tang, although my father has a high status, he still understands the hardships of the people. If you know nothing about him, I ask that you don't talk irresponsibly like this. Tang Xiu shot a cold glance at him and didn't reply. Tang Guisheng scolded in a low voice, Yunpeng, don't talk rubbish. Despite scolding, he was secretly surprised inside. He could tell that Tang Xiu had correctly guessed his identity, yet he didn't have the slightest fear of him. It was as if his status and identity was nothing. He knew that if ordinary people knew his identity, he was certain that they would be greatly shocked and would immediately start acting respectfully in front of him. For example, the president of Star City Chinese Medical Hospital, Li Hongji. Tang Yunpeng showed a slightly forced smile as he got scolded. He intended to give Tang Xiu a lesson, but the latter was, after all, a divine doctor, and his father's illness also needed his treatment. So he could only repress the idea inside his heart. Looking at Tang Xiu, Tang Guisheng laughed, Divine Dr. Tang, I made you laugh at me. These children of mine are good for nothing and love to talk rubbish, so please ignore them. It's just that I've never thought that you'd have such a great ability despite being so young. Tang Xiu said indifferently, no problem. Tang Dong, on the other hand, could see the indifference on Tang Xiu's expression. He quickly said, Tang Xiu, I really never knew that you'd unexpectedly be a divine doctor. Had I known it earlier, I would have already asked you to examine my uncle. Tang Xiu said, treating it now isn't too late. Even though he has some breathing problems, it wouldn't be a problem for him to live for more 8 to 10 years. After I've cured his asthma, he could still live for more than 10 years. Great. Tang Dong was pleasantly surprised. Tang Dong's complexion suddenly flickered. He suddenly recalled something and quickly said, Tang Xiu, since you're hailed as a divine doctor that even my uncle flew from thousands of miles to Star City for your treatment, then, could it be possible for you to treat my third brother? If you can treat him, I'll give all the fierce beasts' bodies and bones to you for free, I'll not ask a dime for them. Tang Guisheng on the sickbed, Tang Yunpeng and Tang Min at the bedside, all of them had their spirits startled as their eyes instantly stared at Tang Xiu intensely. All would be delivered for free? Tang Xiu looked at Tang Dong with astonishment. One must note that the price of a fierce beast's body and bones was around 5 million yuan, and it would continue rising later on. And this man said he would send all of them to him for free? The price itself, wasn't it rather too big a number? What's his illness? Tang Dong replied with a heavy tone, his brain was hit hard and he has been in a coma for 19 years. The most famous medical experts throughout the world have determined that he is in a vegetative state. Tang Xiu nodded, if there's an opportunity, I'll try it. But I'm very busy for the time being, so I have no time. Tang Guisheng asked anxiously, Divine Dr. Tang, why you can treat someone in a vegetative state? Tang Xiu said lightly, whether or not I can treat it, I can only tell after I examine him. He has been in a coma for 19 years, yet he's still alive until now. It seems that you have spent quite the laborious efforts. A painful expression flashed on Tang Guoxing's face. He tightly gripped his wrinkled palm. After a few seconds of silence, he said bitterly, "He's my youngest son." He was 25 years old when he entered into a vegetative state, and coincidentally, he was injured in this Star City. Star City? Tang Xiu was stupefied as his heart turned tense all of a sudden. After being silent for a moment, Tang Xiu asked with a deep tone, "What's the name of your youngest son?" "Tang Yunda." Tang Guoxing answered in a low and deep tone. "What did you say?" Tang Xiu's complexion changed greatly and turned pale, disbelief showing in his eyes. Tang Yunda? It was a familiar name yet an unfamiliar one, for which he firmly carved it inside his ear for 20 years. And for all these years the owner of this name was also the target of his hatred. Tang Guoxing was flabbergasted as he looked at Tang Xiu. "Divine Dr. Tang, how come you?" Tang Xiu glared at Tang Guoxing with a coldness suffusing inside his eyes as he asked a series of questions. "Tang Yunda? Did he live in seclusion 19 years ago in Star City? 25 years old at that time? Comes from Beijing? And was once a famous soldier?" Tang Guoxing was astonished. "How did you know about that?" Tang Xiu's unsightly face turned grimmer. He understood in an instant. He then turned to look at Li Hongji and snapped with a stern tone, "Get them out of Star City Chinese Medical Hospital, and get the hell out of Star City. I will never treat his illness even if he dies." "What?" Li Hongji was shocked. He was dumbstruck and stupefied as Tang Xiu suddenly raged violently. Tang Xiu's eyes were as though a wolf's, watching Tang Guoxing, Tang Yunpeng, Tang Min as well as Tang Dong with icy, deadpan eyes. He turned around and rapidly left. Only when he was on the stairs did he stop. Leaning his back against the wall, he panted roughly. Tang Yunda. How he used to hate the owner of this name. He originally thought he would no longer hate him after he had grown up, even believing that any contact between them would never occur. Yet, he suddenly heard this man's name and even saw his father and siblings. The accumulation of hatred that had been buried deep inside his heart for so many years erupted once more. This hatred was not for himself, but it was for his lonely and forsaken mother who brought him up. Tang Xiu's hands were trembling. He took out a cigarette pack from his pocket, lit it up and deeply sucked it twice. Slowly, the anger inside his innermost world returned back to normal. Inside the ward, the Tang family was shocked by Tang Xiu's reaction. They were clueless as to why Tang Xiu would show them such an intense hatred. Tang Xiu's expression just now, it made them think they were his mortal enemies. What happened? Tang Guoxing's lips shivered and wriggled a few times. He looked at the door in a daze. Suddenly, he seemed to realize something as his eyes turned wide with disbelief. He then shouted with a stern voice, "Quickly catch up to him. Find him and bring him back." Tang Yunpeng awoke from his daze, asking with a confused expression despite sobering up, "Father, what kind of situation is this?" Tang Guoxing was as if unable to hear his son's question. Inside his mind, he repeatedly recalled the call from his youngest son before he turned into a vegetative state. "Father. You will be a grandfather again. Little Yun is pregnant now, it's been 3 months already. Could it be?" Tang Guoxing's old body was slightly trembling. He knew that he had a missing grandson or granddaughter that he had never seen. 19 years ago, he had sent a large number of people to find his youngest son's wife, his daughter-in-law whom he had never met before. However, he only knew that his youngest son's wife was called Little Yun, there was no other information. Therefore, they were naturally unable to find anything from the investigation. He always imagined that his youngest son would wake up one day, and then he would hear from him about his daughter-in-law and his granddaughter or grandson. Unfortunately, he was struck with disappointment. Chapter 259, Only as Strangers. Tang Yunpeng watched his father's constantly changing expression with eyes full of curiosity, whereas Tang Min and Tang Dong looked confused, as they were clueless about what kind of situation they were in. "Why aren't you chasing him?" Tang Guisheng came out from his daze and immediately called out as he saw that his children were still there. Tang Yunpeng hesitated for a while. Then, he turned around and walked out of the ward. As he entered the corridor outside, he was still figuring out the whole process. He waved to a bodyguard in casual attire and asked, "The young man who just came out of the ward, where did he go?" The guard pointed to the stairs, there. Tang Yunpeng nodded and strode toward the stairs. Just as he reached there, he saw Tang Xiu leaning on the wall, looking gloomy and smoking a cigarette. "Divine Dr. Tang, I want to know the reason you acted like that." Tang Xiu looked at him with a cold and detached expression. "You have neither the right nor the qualification. Even your father doesn't have that right either. If I'm not mistaken, at that time, Tang Yunda was expelled from your family and then came to Star City alone, am I right?" Tang Yunpeng knitted his brows as he asked, "How do you know so much about my youngest brother's situation?" Tang Xiu shook his head. "I know very little, but these are enough for my family to detest your Tang family. So I'm telling you to not provoke me. Your Tang family might be big and powerful, but if I want to destroy you, it's still within my capabilities." The frown on Tang Yunpeng's face grew deeper as he continued asking, "You seem very hostile toward us. Do my Tang family and yours have any hatred and grudges?" Tang Xiu sneered, "A grudge? How I wish that it was only a grudge. Just forget it, I already told you that I cannot treat your father's illness. Do your best to deal with it yourself." Having said that, he walked downstairs. "Wait." A loud voice reverberated. It wasn't Tang Yunpeng but Tang Guisheng who came with someone propping him up. Tang Xiu stopped and looked at him coldly. Tang Guisheng stopped in front of Tang Xiu. He prudently looked at Tang Xiu's features for a long while before muttering, "You look like him, at least 60%. 20 years ago, I almost turned Star City inside out, but still, I failed to find my youngest daughter-in-law, a woman called Little Yun. Since Yunda suddenly got injured and turned into a vegetative state, it's already been 20 years that I've been hoping for him to wake up, so he that can tell me personally that woman's full name." At that very same time yesteryear, he told me that she was already pregnant and lived here. "What?" Tang Yunpeng and Tang Xiu exclaimed out in alarm without them realizing. Even Tang Dong's eyes turned wide, disbelief shooting out from his eyes. They all knew about this matter, and it had been a long time they had been seeking for the answer. Could it be? The three people's eyes looked at Tang Xiu intensely. Tang Xiu was silent. He knew nothing of the actual facts that had happened that year. If that man suddenly went missing because he was severely injured and turned into a vegetative state and then was brought back to the capital, should he hate him for this? Finally, Tang Xiu slowly raised his head and looked at the excited Tang Guisheng, saying indifferently, "That's your family's problem. Nothing of it is related to me whatsoever. I may help and treat your illness, but I want you to never again appear in Star City afterward." Tang Guisheng walked forward a step and said with all solemnness, "If you're my..." Tang Xiu waved his hand to interrupt him and said with a cold and detached expression, "No. The more I hear that hated name, the more extreme I'll respond to it. Furthermore, I'm already 22 and I shall have nothing whatsoever related to you. So, just go to the ward and I'll treat you there." 22 years old? Tang Guisheng frowned deeply. If Tang Xiu's age became the reference, he couldn't be his own grandson, yet his response and appearance were too unusual. Even if he wasn't his grandson, perhaps there was an unseparated relationship between him and his daughter-in-law. "Tang Xiu, you know about my youngest son's situation and your response is way too unusual. So, I'm very sure you must know something. Please tell me, my Tang family will certainly thank you for this." While walking toward the ward, Tang Xiu replied with a cold and detached voice, "I couldn't care less about the gratefulness of your Tang family. You'd better not to think about this messed up shit and rather focus on your asthma. If you want me to treat you, then cut the crap. If you don't want me to treat you, then don't shit much longer here and go the hell back to Beijing. Tang Guisheng wore a complicated expression on his face. The more unusual Tang Xiu acted, the more he was certain about his suspicion. Tang Xiu must know a lot about his youngest son and his wife. Yet, with the apparent hostile attitude Tang Xiu had toward him, he felt that he must not act with undue haste. A strange light glinted from Tang Dong and Tang Min's eyes even though they kept silent. Tang Yunpeng, however, frowned and said with a heavy tone, Tang Xiu, you'd better pay attention to your attitude. Humph, Tang Xiu snorted coldly, you think that my attitude isn't good enough? If you feel so, then get the hell out. Tang Yunpeng was incensed. He was a man with a prominent position and also a high-ranking official of the region. No one dared to speak to him with such attitude for many years. Furthermore, his father had a more distinguished status and was someone of equal status with the few senior statesmen of the country. Now, however, a 20-year-old young man humiliated him, causing him to want to act against Tang Xiu at once. Tang Guisheng raised his hand to stop Tang Yunpeng as he glared at him. Only then did he look at Tang Xiu and said, then I'll have to trouble you for this, divine Dr. Tang. After returning to the ward, Su Jianda saw Tang Xiu returning and quickly asked, Tang Xiu, are you all right? Tang Xiu squeezed out a smile as he shook his head, Uncle Jianda, I'm fine. Su Jianda calmed himself down from his tensed-up state. He was a typical countryside layman. All of his relatives were also local farmers there. They also thought that Tang Guisheng looked somewhat familiar before, and at present, they suddenly realized they had seen him on TV. He was one of the big-shot leaders of the country. As good-hearted as he was, he wished to urge Tang Xiu to not offend this kind of big shot. But then, he swallowed the line that was already on the tip of his tongue. Tang Xiu pointed to the sickbed and spoke with a deep tone, take off your coat and get down with your face to the floor. Tang Guisheng did as he was told and lied at the end of the sickbed. Although he didn't know how Tang Xiu would treat him, with the title of divine doctor, then it surely wouldn't be a prank. Tang Xiu's fingers pressed Tang Guisheng's chest center acupoints and rubbed it for half a minute. Then, he took the alcohol and alcohol cotton handed over by Li Hongji and rubbed that acupoints over and over again, while his fingers pressed all the acupoints on Tang Guisheng's lungs. Asthma was also known as bronchial asthma. It was a chronic inflammatory disease of the airways of the lungs, which involved a variety of cells and respiratory parts. If the conditions become more serious, it could lead to pneumonia. The chronic airways inflammation oftentimes was accompanied by the increasing of hyperresponsive respiratory tracts, leading to repeated wheezing, shortness of breath, chest tightness, and coughing. If one wanted to cure it, besides treating the bronchial obstruction, on the other hand, one would have to ease the inflammation of the lungs. Tang Xiu actually had a more effective treatment method. However, Tang Guisheng's age was, after all, already advanced and not suitable for quite radical treatments, even though the effect of such treatment method was extremely excellent. Therefore, Tang Xiu could only choose the gentle method with a slightly worse effect than the first method. Yet, despite the method being gentle, it still frightened the people around. As one of Tang Xiu's hands took the alcohol and alcohol cotton from Li Hongji, he also took back his other hand from Tang Guisheng's lungs acupoints. Along with the flow of his star force into the palm of his hand, Tang Xiu began to hit Tang Guisheng's back repeatedly. Each and every hit he did it caused his star force to enter Tang Guisheng's body, as he controlled the surging force toward the internal organs, lungs, and trachea until his star force gradually seeped into them. Cough, cough, cough. A severe cough made Tang Guisheng's body tremble. His eyes turned bloated and his face turned red. Even the green veins on his forehead protruded. The crowd around were trembling as they watched the scene, scared shitless. The Tang family, in particular, had a thought sprout in their hearts. Tang Xiu had said that he wouldn't treat this old man, yet, Would he be possible to take the chance to retaliate at this time and then cause the old man to suffer? About 10 minutes later, Tang Guisheng was no longer coughing. Tang Shou slowly retracted his hands. He then washed his hands with the warm water and said indifferently, "Let the senior Chinese medical doctor from the hospital make a Chinese herbal medicine prescription to raise the qi and moisten the lungs. Drink the medicine for 3 to 5 days. Anyways, President Li, he's fine now, he can already be discharged. The hospital has insufficient wards, so we might as well have it unoccupied and not delay the other patients." This? Li Hongji hesitated. Tang Guisheng slowly got up from the sickbed at this time as he sat there, stroking his chest. A faint excited expression was revealed on his old face. He could clearly feel that his breathing was particularly smooth, very different from his usual struggle to breathe. Even his brain was much soberer and clearer than before. The effect that satisfied him the most was that he could feel that his body was very comfortable, as though he got a few decades younger. His body now felt a lot more relaxed. Leave the hospital and take care of the administration formalities immediately. At the moment, Tang Guisheng's voice brought with it a lot more strength than before. Li Hongji dared not to offend Tang Shou or Tang Guisheng. And now, he immediately felt relieved inwardly upon seeing Tang Guisheng compromising. However, his eyes had a lot more admiration when he looked at Tang Shou now. Who was Tang Guisheng? He was one of the senior statesmen of the country. Someone with an honorable status and above hundreds of millions of people. Yet, Tang Shou dared to have such attitude toward him, even Li Hongji couldn't help but slightly worship him. After Tang Shou had treated Tang Guisheng, he no longer stayed at the Chinese medical hospital. By now, he only had one thought, that was, to immediately rush to his hometown in Qinghe County to see his mother. Prior to this, his mother had never wanted to tell him anything about this, and he also didn't want to disturb and make her awkward about the matter. Yet, now was different. Since that man was still alive and also in a vegetative state, for whatever it could be, he must tell this issue to his mother. As for what his mother would do, he could only respect her decision. On the way back, he called Su Ben and Su Quan, telling them to not leave for Star City as he wanted the both of them to wait for him in the Su village. 2 hours later, Tang Shou had driven back to the Su village. When he had just parked his car outside his grandmother's courtyard, Su Ben and Su Qian came out from the house. "Tang Shou." Su Quan called him out. Tang Shou waved at him and said, "You two wait for me outside. I have something important to discuss with my mother. After we talk, I'll chat with the both of you." "All right." Su Ben and Su Quan nodded at the same time. Chapter 260, The Not Unexpected Decision. Star City, at Long's dining hall. Inside the luxurious presidential suite, Tang Guisheng sat uprightly on the living room's couch. He had stopped smoking for decades, yet he was smoking right now. Even though his children had tried to stop him, they were unable to do so. At this time, the eyebrows on his old face were deeply wrinkled as he looked at his mobile on the coffee table in front of him from time to time. He was waiting for the investigation result which he had ordered to be carried out after he left Star City Chinese Medical Hospital. Ring, ring, ring. His mobile's ringtone finally sounded. The call Tang Guisheng was anxiously waiting. Report. Tang Guisheng extinguished his cigarette with quite an effort as he grabbed the mobile and answered the call. His expression and voice were extremely serious. A voice then transmitted through his phone, "Senior Chief, we've investigated Tang Shou's information clearly. He's 20 years old this year, with excellent academic performance and the top scorer of science subjects for Shuangqing Province this year. Hometown is the Su village in Qinghe County. No father, was brought up by his mother, Su Lingyun. He also still has a grandmother in his hometown." When Tang Guisheng heard that Tang Shou was really 20 years old, he suddenly stood up. His old body couldn't help but tremble upon hearing the name Su Lingyun. He was now completely sure that Tang Xiu was his grandson. His age fit. Single parent. Everything fit. Su Lingyun, with the last character of Little Yun, also coincided with the name said by his youngest son. Tang Guisheng didn't believe that existed so much coincidence. After listening to the report, a long period of time passed before he slowly sat back on the sofa. His eyes were somewhat wet, a complex expression within. He was perfectly aware of Tang Xiu's hatred and anger, as well as understood why he was like that. The incident that happened to his youngest son was too sudden, so sudden that he hadn't been able to confess to Su Lingyun. However, he neither had a clue nor understand why Su Lingyun didn't go to Beijing to find the Tang family after so many years. Could it be that she wasn't sure she had borne the descendant of the Tang family, meaning she already became the daughter-in-law of the Tangs? Tang Yunpeng, who stood at the side, could see the complex expression on his father's face. After hesitating for a long period of time, he finally couldn't help but ask, "Father, what's the result?" Tang Guisheng slowly raised his head as he looked at his children and nephew in front of him. He then nodded and said, "I wasn't wrong. Tang Xiu is really the son of your youngest brother, my grandson." Tang Yunpeng quickly replied, "But his age?" Tang Guisheng said, "He didn't want to recognize us and used it as an excuse. His real age is 20 years old and he lives with his mother and has no father. He grew up in the Su village from childhood with the family from his maternal line." At this moment, Tang Yunpeng, Tang Min, and Tang Dong understood. Tang Yunpeng said in a heavy tone, "Father, since he's the descendant of our Tang family, we can't ignore him. No matter what he wants, we must take him back to Beijing with us to kowtow before our ancestral shrine and recognize his ancestors and family line. Besides, he also has superb medical expertise, he could even cure your chronic asthma you had endured for so many years. Perhaps, he really has the confidence to save Yunda from his coma." Tang Guisheng shook his head with a pained expression, sigh, "For him to recognize his ancestors and family line is necessary, that I know. Yet, I'm afraid that it could be a very difficult process. You also saw how deep the resentment he showed when he identified our identities. The accumulation of resentfulness for 20 years is not something that could fade away within a short while. Furthermore, let alone the fact that he has cured my asthma, just solely the lonely and forsaken life those mother and son had gone through, which I believe it's our sin, for they have suffered so many hardships and sufferings for so many years. Our Tang family indeed have no qualifications and right to ask him anything. Then, how should we proceed with this, Father?" After pondering for a moment, Tang Min asked. Tang Guisheng replied with a heavy tone, "I'll go to Qinghe County personally. Go and prepare the car for me." "I am coming too. I am coming too." Tang Yunpeng and Tang Min shouted in unison. Tang Dong also opened his mouth, yet, for fear that his uncle, Tang Guisheng would reprimand him, he strongly held back the urge. Tang Guisheng shook his head, "Little Min, you'll go with me. As for you, Yunpeng, since our Tang family has been in a very unstable situation due to my sickness, you must go back to the capital and help your third uncle stabilize the situation there. Furthermore, the matter with Little Tong must be carried out as fast as possible. Even if we must trade it with some of the interests the opposite party wants, she has to take that position. This retreat, all in all, would be very helpful for our Tang family's layout plan in advance." This. Understood. Tang Yunpeng hesitated for a moment before reluctantly agreeing. At the Su village, Qinghe County. Tang Xiu entered his grandmother's house courtyard and he saw his mother washing his grandmother's clothes while Su Xiangfei helped her with the laundry. Xiu, didn't you tell me that you wouldn't come back for the time being? How come?" The surprised expression was suddenly revealed on Su Lingyun's face as she saw Tang Xiu. Looking at Su Xiangfei with the back of his eyes, Tang Xiu then replied to her, "Mom, I have something important to talk to you. Let's find a quiet place." "What important thing?" asked Su Lingyun with a puzzled expression. Tang Shou walked to the side room where he stayed and said, "Mom, please follow me and you'll know it. But you have to be mentally prepared. And please don't be agitated regardless of anything you hear from me." Su Lingyun laughed involuntarily. "You, Sunny, how come you're acting so mysterious?" "All right, I promise you that I won't get agitated." Inside the side room, Tang Shou closed the door from the inside as he released his perception and found that Su Xiangfei didn't come over to secretly eavesdrop, but sat on the spot where his mother just left and continued to dry the washed clothes. He then nodded his head as he turned around to look at Su Lingyun, saying, "Mom, I just met some people today." Su Lingyun was as at a loss whether to cry or laugh. You just met some people, why would you even need to report to me?" "Right. Were those people from the top universities in China wanting to throw you an olive branch because you're the top scorer for the science subjects in Shuangqing province this year?" "I too have heard that numerous universities would rush and struggle to receive the CET's top scorer from each province every year." Tang Xiu replied with all solemnness, "Mom, the people I met were not those from the top universities. They were all surnamed Tang." Su Lingyun stared blankly for a moment as her complexion changed greatly and turned pale. Tang Xiu continued with a heavy tone, "There was also an old man. He's called Tang Guisheng, as well as his eldest son, Tang Yunpeng, his daughter, Tang Min, and his nephew, Tang Dong, who came from the capital. They are the Tang family of Beijing." Su Lingyun's body trembled. If not for her quickly supporting herself on the wall, she would have fallen to the floor. Her face turned extremely desolate, with fear glittering inside her eyes. Tang Xiu held her arms, taking her to sit on the edge of the bed. Only after that did he continue, "Mom, I think you need to tell me something about this." "Certainly, I still have many things that I have yet to tell you, such as, the news about him." The news about him?" Su Lingyun's eyes contracted violently, with an inconceivable expression bursting from her eyes. He was still alive? Tang Xiu no longer spoke. He knew that his mother would need some time to digest the news. After a long period of time, an agitated and disturbed expression covered Su Lingyun's face, along with some expectations within it as she whispered, "Where's he?" "Beijing," answered Tang Xiu faintly. A thick sense of loss was revealed on her face while translucent crystal tears spun inside her eyes. She bit her lower lips as she murmured, He didn't die. Why didn't he come find us? He obviously knew that I was pregnant that time." Tang Xiu interrupted her, "He has been in a coma for 20 years, in a vegetative state." "What?" Su Lingyun was shaken and shocked by Tang Xiu's news. Looking at him in a daze, she looked as though she couldn't believe what she heard. In a vegetative state? For 20 years? In an instant, Su Lingyun broke into tears. A thick remorse rose inside her, regretting not going to the capital. She clearly knew that his family was there, but why didn't she go there to look for him? Tang Xiu held her gently as he patted her back and said, "Mom, I always knew that you're a strong woman ever since I was small. You might look soft on the outside, but you have a tenacious and strong heart. Please don't cry, and tell me everything about that year." Su Lingyun wept bitterly for a while. After that, only then did she raise her hazy and tearful face, speaking in a bitter and painful tone. "In the past, he got a call from his comrades to go out. So he said that he would go out drinking. At that time, I didn't take him seriously but waited for him. I then waited for a day, 2 days, 3 days. He was then missing, without even any news. I reported to the police, yet there were no results whatsoever. I always believed he wouldn't abandon us, so I thought that he had died in some dark alley. Afterward, Su Shangguan took me back home and I lived there until you were born. After giving birth to you, I didn't give up hope and wanted to go to the capital to find him and his Tang family. But, I didn't dare. I was afraid." Tang Xiu sighed secretly. "You were afraid that I would be taken away by the Tangs, weren't you?" Su Lingyun nodded silently and replied amidst her crying. The Tang family of Beijing is a wealthy family and has fearsome power and influence. If they knew that I had Tang Yunda's son, I was afraid they'd snatch you away from me. I've already lost a husband, I can never bear to lose my own son. So all these years, you never thought of going to Beijing? Asked Tang Xiu. Xiu, do you remember before you entered junior high school? Every year I said I had to go to the neighboring city to see our relatives. In fact, where would I have any relatives in the neighboring cities? I basically spent all the little bit of money I saved to find news about your dad. For more than a decade I went there every year, I even went to the old residence of the Tangs hundreds of times, yet I only dared to secretly observe the place from far away. However, I've never heard anyone mention about your dad and never once have I ever seen him, said Su Lingyun with a bitter and agonized expression. Tang Xiu suddenly realized and said earnestly, Mom, I think you've done the right thing. I felt happy being raised up by you, receiving and feeling motherly love. But what? Su Lingyun finally stopped crying and asked. Tang Xiu replied, but, what do you intend to do now? Su Lingyun answered without thinking, I'll go see your father. I believe him. As long as he doesn't die, there will be no difficulties. He has been in a coma, lying on the cold bed for 20 years, without me staying at his side to take care of him. Therefore, as long as he's still alive, I'll stay with him for the rest of my life and look after him.